apparently the cost of the Snowy 2.0 project had blown out to $12 billion.
Steve, look, this has effectively doubled in price from $6 billion to $12 billion since Labor's come to office. And I think it's worthwhile taking a step back, looking at this in the broader context of where we are at. Labor is already behind in a lot of its targets, whether it be emissions, whether it be renewables, its price targets. Only last week, an independent energy economist exposed a $60 billion black hole in the government's climate and energy policies. $60 billion, which is being ignored as costs by the government. And today we read in the Sydney Morning Herald that Snowy 2.0 has gone from $6 billion to $12 billion. And so we will wait to see what the full report says when hopefully it gets released tomorrow.
Why isn't that the problem of the coalition? Because this project came about through your old boss, former Liberal Party Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. It's his baby, not the government's.
So when the coalition left office, there was a review done by the Australian National Audit Office, and it concluded that Snowy 2.0 was being managed well, that the governance framework was very effective. Now, that was basically when the coalition left office. And then we heard this morning on radio from former CEO Paul Broad of Snowy 2.0 that the funding envelope at that time was around $6 billion. So what's happened, therefore, you put those 2 points together, you have the coalition leaving office with the Australian National Audit Office saying, good job, well run, and the former CEO saying, budget $6 billion, to today. And suddenly now you have a $12 billion price tag, effectively a doubling since Labor came to office.
Isn't that, though, because the construction company has hit very heavy rock and the driller is stuck? In other words, it's an unforeseen engineering problem, now headache.
Steve, I think there's no doubt that this is one very complex engineering feat. And I don't think anybody would deny that. And I also think that there are legitimate reasons why you could argue, due to supply chain challenges and so forth, that there might be some increases in costs. However, what has really driven a doubling since Labor came to office, I think that gives rise to a series of questions that I'm hoping tomorrow's exposure of the report will answer. And one of those questions is this: why has the contractual arrangements for Snowy 2.0 apparently moved from being a fixed fee project to a cost plus project, which effectively means that the government has agreed to shift the risk and the cost of blowouts to the Australian taxpayer rather than the prime contractor?
So that's different from when the coalition was in government. It was all on the contractor when your side was in government, but now you're saying that the federal government now has shifted the cost to the taxpayer.
That's exactly what we need answered when the report comes out.
Oh, okay. So we won't know that till tomorrow. Okay.
Correct. So that is what has been suggested to us. It has already been reported elsewhere a couple of months ago that may have happened. Paul Broad mentioned on radio this morning that was his understanding. And Steve, as you might recall, my background pre-politics was doing a lot of deal work, a lot of international deal work. I've been around the table, I've negotiated a lot of deals. If you suddenly shift your deal arrangement from a fixed fee, and you're the buyer, right, a fixed fee arrangement, to a cost plus, where the entity delivering the goods or services can just keep doing the job, they're passing on the costs, they still get their margin on top, well, that means you are absorbing more risk and you're absorbing the cost of any blowout. So this is one of the key questions we need the Minister to be answering tomorrow once the report is laid out.
If we didn't do Snowy 2.0, what are the alternatives? Because we know that we're going to have an energy shortfall because we're shutting down coal-fired power stations. If we don't do that, if we don't do Snowy 2.0, where does the electricity come from?
I don't think anyone at this stage is saying that the whole notion or principle of Snowy 2.0 is a bad thing. Indeed, Snowy itself, 1.0, if you like, is an iconic pioneering feat for Australia about which we're all proud. But if there's a concern I've got with where we're going at the moment is the government suite of policies are forcing a race to the exit of our existing baseload power stations. So 80% of our baseload power will exit the Australian grid by 2035. That's 80%. And there is no guarantee of a replacement. And half the problem here is that the government is basically putting its foot on the pedal, saying, OK, exit, 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 while at the same time there's been a stalling of investment in renewables, there's been a heightening of sovereign risk for investment in gas. So things are becoming a total mess, Steve.
The Governor of the Reserve Bank, Michelle Bullock, the new Governor of the Reserve Bank, made some comments about this in Canberra yesterday, expressing her or laying out what the Reserve Bank sees as the risks from the climate and the economy.
Now, these climate risks will affect the economy through several channels. Hotter temperatures and more extreme weather will disrupt businesses. They'll damage property and lower productivity growth. Actions taken to reduce emissions might present adjustment costs, but they'll also present opportunities. Indeed, while there's much uncertainty in this area, there is general agreement that a timely and orderly transition will be the less costly approach in the long run.
Ted O'Brien is the Queensland federal member for Fairfax. He's also the shadow spokesperson for climate change and energy. This is ABC Radio Brisbane. Steve Austin's my name. So is that timely transition taking place as far as the opposition is concerned?
No, Steve, it's not. I think from those words there is no doubt that there is a consensus, I believe, between the two governing parties of this country as to where we need to get to by 2050. Where there's a debate, it's how you get there. So a lot of Michelle's words there in terms of the climate risks, there's no debate between the coalition and the government on that. Where there is a big debate is how do you get there? How do you decarbonise the country? And we believe that Labor is setting Australia up for a fall. And if we keep going down this path, come 2050, we'll be a far weaker and poorer nation. And it's the Australian people who pay. I mean, for the RBA leader to come out in her first real milestone speech since taking the position, making it very clear that basically if you get the energy policy wrong, it's going to hit Australians. It'll hit them directly through their electricity and gas prices, but indirectly it's going to hit a whole bunch of goods and services that you buy off the grocery shelf. And because inflation goes up, cash rate goes up, so too does your mortgage, well, you're going to be paying more. And this is the problem. Labor came to office promising Australians a $275 reduction in household power bills. Instead, power bills have gone up by hundreds of dollars in their first year. Now we're in their second year, and they're forecast to go up in some parts of the country by nearly, $600. It's going the other way. Australians are paying. They know it's not working. We've got threats to reliability of supply, so we don't know if the lights are going to be going out. It's an unmitigated disaster right now. So what's the answer? The answer is we need to have a different approach to decarbonise the Australian economy.
Like what? Like how?
One that is not ideologically driven, as Labor's is, but one that adopts an all-of-the-above approach. So difficult.
You're talking about including nuclear in the mix somewhere.
Nuclear, carbon capture and storage, you name it. There's a whole suite of technologies that other countries are using today that this government is refusing to even consider because of their ideological proclivity. That is irresponsible. Australians are paying, and they're just going to be paying more and more.
We have a couple of trial programs for carbon capture and storage in Australia, and as far as I'm aware, they're not proven yet. They're not working yet, unless something's happened in recent days. But as far as I'm aware, they're not actually proven yet.
Look, CCS is being used in terms of whether or not it can develop at the level of scalability that is required. Mm-hmm. If you apply the same question mark of, therefore, should we look at it? Maybe we shouldn't. If that's our rationale, then would we really be investing in the possibility of, green hydrogen for export, right? I mean, at the end of the day, as a coalition, we believe all of these technologies should be looked at. We need to have an agnostic approach. Countries that are doing this well, Steve, they adopt this all-of-the-above approach. Every technology has a different purpose, a different role. The trick is to have a balance of technologies as you decarbonise the grid. That's what works overseas, but the Australian Labor Party is refusing to contemplate a balanced mix.
The Labor Party has supported your previous government, the government you were previously a member of, the idea of nuclear-powered submarines in the AUKUS agreement. So we'll have nuclear-powered submarines, but we won't have nuclear power. Has that argument progressed at all in Canberra as far as you're concerned on the opposition side?
Steve, I think it's progressed with the Australian people, most importantly. I don't see any movement from the Labor government on it. It exposes an inherent contradiction. The nuclear reactors that will be in Australia's AUKUS nuclear-propelled submarines, well, they generate energy. They are nuclear reactors that generate energy. Well, so too are the next-generation small modular reactors that many countries are adopting to generate energy for their grid, but also to help hard-to-abate industry decarbonise. That's what other countries are doing. But for some reason, this Labor Party thinks it's fine for us to have nuclear reactors in submarines, have our submariners sleep with them, travel from port to port, but well, we can't have one on shore. I mean, that just doesn't make sense in anyone's logical mind, especially considering for well over 60 years we've successfully managed a nuclear reactor 30 kilometres outside Sydney CBD. We're already a nuclear nation. We've got a reactor. We're adopting nuclear subs. Why on earth would we not consider this as part of a broader balanced energy mix for our future?
Ted O'Brien, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Steve.
Ted O'Brien.